So
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Marilyn Gallucci. I'm a professor and director of geriatrics research at our University of New England College of Osteopathic Medicine. And I have the good fortune of working with the UNICOM, AMOPS group, which is the Association for Military Osteopathic Physicians and Surgeons. And Katie, who you were just hearing from, is the president of the organization this year. And we have some other students joining us from AMOPS. So, and with that, we are recording tonight. And I will have the pleasure of introducing Susan Gold, who is the executive director for Vet Maine, and the founding director of Vet Maine. And so, Susan, I'm going to turn this over to you and we can get started.
thank you, Marilyn, and welcome everyone. We're delighted to have you here today to hear our special presentation by Vet Maine volunteer Gretchen Evans. A big thank you to the Maine Humanities Council, whose generous grant funded this evening's presentation, and two others, all of which will soon be available on our website, www.vet2vetmaine.org. And I'll put that on the chat too for people. And we also have special thanks to the University of New England, Marilyn Gallucci, and the AMOPS group. And Marilyn wrote the grant for us and helped set up this evening's event. So thank you so much for that. As Dr. Gallucci noted, I am Susan Gold, Executive Director of Vet Maine, and our mission is to ease the social isolation many veterans encounter and to assist them in connecting with other programs and benefit services, that kind of thing, including the VA, and that could provide benefits and services to improve their quality of life. We do this by recruiting veterans to be peer companions and matching them to other veterans who need a friend. The peer companions call or visit their assigned veterans at least twice a month, providing fellowship and assistance. And we have some fabulous volunteers who carry out this program and do a wonderful job in connecting other veterans to services they need and to the community at large. So thank you to those volunteers. If you are interested in joining our effort to ease social isolation among veterans, please visit our website. And as I said, I'll put that web address in the chat box. We are so grateful to Gretchen for sharing her inspirational story with us here tonight. Command Sergeant Major Gretchen Evans is one of the most decorated female soldiers in U.S. history. That takes my breath away. Gretchen will tell of the challenges she faced as a severely disabled veteran and how she overcame those challenges to become an international star as the founding member of Team Unbroken, a group of disabled veteran and civilian competitors on Bear Grylls' World's Toughest Race. She'll be available to answer questions after the talk. And I will ask everyone to mute yourself so that we don't have extraneous noise, because I want to focus on Gretchen's talk. So thank you for that. Thank you, Gretchen, and I'll turn it over to you now.
I just want to say thank you for having me tonight. I know everybody's got busy, crazy schedules, so I appreciate the time. And you allow me, and I'll tell you my story. And as you hear this story, I want you to think that it's really not just my story. It's a story that is of many veterans. I just happen to be the person who's delivering it tonight. This is, like I said, my story is shared with so many, or at least similarities in my stories. So after high school, like many, I went to college for a year and couldn't quite decide what I wanted to do. And I was financially on my own. So I came up with a plan that I would join the military to stay 4 years, get the educational benefits and pick up a skill, and then I would return to college. But what I found once I joined the military was the perfect fit for me. I loved the camaraderie, the discipline, the I don't know, it's the fellowship of the soldiers and everything that we did. And so what started out to be a 4-year commitment turned out to be a 27-year career, of which even in some of my worst moments or some of my best memories, and I don't know how else to say that, but then there's some truth to that. So I started out as an intel analyst, analyzes our other armies, militaries that were considered our enemies, if you will, so we could counter them and protect our country. And then I became a counterintelligence agent, which is really just a spy in the military, and went to language school and airborne school and all those kinds of things that go with that type of job. And then I had the opportunity to join a Black Ops organization and do some undercover work, which was quite wonderful and fascinating. I did that for about 10 years. And then I came out of that and went back into the real army, as we would say, back into the Green Army, back into uniform. And this is about the time when 9/11 happened. I had just made Command Sergeant Major. And of course, that day is the day that changed everybody's life that's probably living today. And it certainly changed mine and lots of my friends and fellow warriors. So 9/11 happened, and I was deployed shortly right after the Air Force went in and bombed all the terrorist training camps in Afghanistan. I went in shortly after the course of the Green Berets and the Special Forces and the SEALs went in. I went in with the first mass ground in October 2001. And I can, Afghanistan was so different than Iraq in the sense that Afghanistan, there was no infrastructure, that the country had been decimated by years and years of war, as you know, and the Taliban had really done awful things to that country, and it was pretty dismal. I ended up doing 3 tours in Afghanistan and in Iraq in short order from 2001 to 2006. And so it was on this particular day in 2006, it was February the 16th. And I was about to start rotating my unit back to the States. And so what that kind of looks like is when you start rotating units back, these are big units. These are division size units that have 10,000 soldiers. And so you start rotating them back over a couple of months. So the most dangerous time in any deployment are the first 90 days, because you're learning the land, you're learning the rules of engagement, getting to know what's safe and what's not. And then the last 90 days are very dangerous, because what do soldiers start thinking about? They start thinking about going home to go see that loved ones they've been away from for a year or longer. They start thinking about children that have been born since they've been gone. They start thinking about all these things. And so sometimes they can lose their edge a little bit. So my job that particular day, was to fly in a helicopter to forward operating bases that are on the very tip of the sword of the, if you will, of the battle. These little small bases really close to the Pakistan border. And I was just kind of trying to give it like a morale talk and say, hey guys, we're 90 days from going home, and it seems like it's right around the corner, but we're still in a very dangerous place. So at this particular forward operating base, I landed, hopped out of the helicopter. The helicopter, removed itself to go put itself in a safer position so it wouldn't be a target sitting on the ground. And I was just shaking hands with the troops, and all of a sudden we started taking mortar fire, and it was coming in like rain. I mean, just peppering this place. So protocol is you send out a quick reaction force. to go and eliminate whoever it is that's firing at you. And everybody else, until the mortars are stopped, goes into what we call the bunkers, which are these igloo-shaped bunkers that are made out of concrete that are reinforced with sandbags so that you don't get hurt by the indirect fire. So I was yelling to the troops, get in the bunkers, get in the bunkers. But before I could get myself into one of the bunkers, a mortar round landed to my right, and it detonated and exploded. And this explosion killed the two soldiers that were standing to my right that were part of my personal security detachment. And the eyewitnesses said that this blast picked me up and threw me horizontally through the air. And then I hit head first one of these concrete bunkers. And even though I had a Kevlar on, it was a pretty powerful impact. The next thing I remember is waking up in the back of a helicopter laying down. And I first thought to myself, this is not the way I usually ride in a helicopter. Usually I'm sitting up and on the radio with the pilot directing troops on the ground. And so I knew instantly something had happened. And I think I do the same thing that anybody does that's been wounded in some way. You kind of look down and do a little bit of a body check. And I saw arms and legs, and then I don't remember much else after that. So I was medevac to Bagram Air Force Base, and then put on the hospital bird to Lonsdale Medical Center, where all the wounded and casualties are sent from the theater. And they had put me into a coma for several days to do an evaluation of my injuries. And part of it was that I had like a million little pieces of shrapnel from that mortar round that went off. And this particular mortar round happened to be handmade, and they had inserted screws and razor blades and all kinds of nasty stuff inside of this rocket. And so they spent a couple of days pulling out pieces of metal of my body, of any place that wasn't protected by my flak jacket. And then they evaluated my internal injuries, and there was some of that, and then some external injuries. On, I think, the fourth day, they woke me up, and I remember laying in the bed, and a very young Army doctor in a white coat standing next to my bed, and he kind of waved his hand in front of my face and kind of got my attention. And he was writing something on a dry erase board. And he flipped it over, and on that dry erase board, he had written the words, "You're deaf." And I took that board from him and I wiped that off with my hand, and with the marker, I wrote the word "forever," and I flipped it over, and he nodded his head. And I knew at that very moment, that very second, that my military career was over, that I was no longer going to be able to serve in the military, because I knew I couldn't serve in being deaf. And I didn't really care about all my other injuries. I didn't care that I had a traumatic brain injury. I didn't even care that I was deaf, and I didn't care that I had wounds all over my body. But the thing that almost killed me was a broken heart, that I had lost my career. I had lost the ability to serve my country, which was very important to me. I knew I would never stand side by side, shoulder to shoulder with my soldiers again. And just the thought of this enormous loss almost was the thing that took my life. So I didn't have a plan B. I was in the middle of a war, and even though I had 27 years in and could have retired, I never gave retirement a second thought. So I was laying in that bed with no safety net. I didn't have a plan B. Like I said, I never thought about what's next. I was still young, still wanted to serve. It never occurred to me. I thought I had a contingency plan for anything that could happen, but I did not plan for myself getting injured. And so my transition from that to what I call civilian life was rocky at best. I went through 18 months of rehabilitation to get my body physically healthy. And that was the easy part. The hard part was to get my mental and emotional health back together, because I didn't feel comfortable in this new world and this new skin of mine. I had been a soldier almost my entire adult life. I went in at 19 and I was wounded at 46 and had not been a civilian in 27 years. And so it was a tough transition for me. And there was lots of things that happened that were, some of them were funny and some of them were not so funny. But one of the things I remember is I went to my first job interview once I thought I was healthy enough to go back to work. And I remember sitting in front of this guy. Now, I was the command sergeant major of all of Afghanistan and had been in leadership role and was decorated. And I thought that my resume looked, pretty good considering. And they're sitting across from this guy who was interviewing me, and he looks up after reading my resume and he says, "Can you type?" And I thought, yes, I can type. And then he paused for a second and he says, "What else can you do?" And, I have to admit, I got a little snarky. Okay. And I said, "I'm deadly accurate with a hand grenade." And that's where that interview ended. And I did not get that job, but it wasn't a great job anyways. But, things like that happen to us. I say us veterans all the time. We're ill-equipped sometimes to re-enter into the civilian force. And also I was being evaluated and judged sometimes based on my injuries. Nobody wanted to hire a 46-year-old person who was deaf, who had a traumatic brain injury, who had PTSD. It was just a bridge too far for them, and it was scary to them. And looking back on it, rightfully so. But that didn't help me. And so I felt like that I was never going to be able to regain a quality of life where I could contribute something, and fell into despair and thought seriously about taking my own life. I was finally through a friend of mine that knew that I was in a very bad place. And he wrote me an email and he says, "Hey, Sergeant Major, I know you're having a hard time." And that he's came back from this organization called No Barriers, who takes veterans out on expeditions. And I think this would really help you. And, I wasn't enthused about this because I had tried lots of things to help myself heal, both physically, mentally, emotionally. I tried medication, I did meditation, I swam with sharks, which was not helpful. I did all kinds of things. And so I was not thinking that a week in the mountains, hiking in Colorado was going to be the silver bullet that was going to change, the way I felt about things. But I went because I gave my word. And to be quite honest with you, it was a little bit of a game changer, more than a little bit. It was a game changer for me. It provided me a little bit of grounding. It gave me an opportunity to be with other veterans. It gave me an opportunity to remember what it felt like to be physically challenged. It gave me an opportunity to hear other people's stories and struggles. So I didn't quite feel so alone and a lot isolated. I didn't feel like that I was the only one going through this. And so what came out of that was this new challenge for myself. And for myself, it was that I was going to take what was meant for bad and I was going to turn it into good. It was take this alchemy, that this life experience of being severely wounded and being kicked to the curb, if you will. And I was going to change that. I was going to do something good for it. So slowly I started advocating for veterans like myself, people who've been wounded, and started speaking. Along the way, I wrote a book called Leading from the Front, and which was well received by a lot of my peers and my soldiers. And I talked about what it was like to be at war and how it changes you. Nobody leaves there untouched, and there's the saying that some gave all, but all gave some. And there's some truth to that. Nobody goes off to war and comes back, untouched, and neither do their families. And so I started advocating for veterans and getting involved in veterans organizations and sharing my story and trying to be an encourager, because I felt like I had turned the corner and maybe I could help other people. And out of that came one day, I was actually in the hospital. I just had surgery, and a friend of mine, Eric Wymeyer, who is the first blind man to climb Mount Everest, is a good friend of mine. And he sent me an email and said, hey, they're putting on the world's toughest race, and I think you should put a team together and go do this. And I said, okay, you know, I'm a pretty positive person. And I thought, I can do that. So I reached out to a couple of battle buddies. And of course, they all said yes pretty quickly. And I said, you might want to read this. This is not a walk in the park. It is the world's toughest race. It's 10 days of the most arduous challenges that you could ever imagine. And so anyway, so I filled out our application and sent it in. And part of the application says, you know, what if you have any medical issues, you need to self-ID. Well, you know, I had like 4 pages of medical issues for my team, because everybody in my team either had a serious injury from war or had an illness or some kind of trauma that had happened to them. So all of us were hurt. We got a response back almost immediately, and it was like a big no. Like, apparently you didn't read the fine print. This is the toughest race in the world. It makes an Ironman look like a church picnic. And I said to them, I wrote back and said, are you disqualifying us because we're disabled? And they basically said, yes, you know, these are like elite athletes. These are people who've been racing together for 20 years, and there's no way that you can do this. And I just didn't want that door closed. I wanted that door open for anyone who wanted to do it. And also I took offense, really personally, not for myself, but also for my team members, that we were again being judged based on our disabilities, and we refer to them as our mixed abilities. And for me, like, an example of that is that I'm totally deaf, but I read lips. So I have mixed abilities. I can't hear anymore, but I picked up another ability. And all of us that were on the team had gone on with our lives, with our injuries, and had become athletes and advocates for people like ourselves. And the reason we came up with the name Team Unbroken was that when people see us, they see something that's broken, because I have physical injuries that you can see, okay, and some invisible ones as well. But we feel like that we get sized up sometimes, you know, and I think that it does happen. And I don't think it's out of malice. I just think it's a natural thing to do, that you see someone who's missing an arm or a leg, or someone who's got scars all over them. You think something's happened to them, and then that they may be broken in some way. And so we came up with the team name Team Unbroken, because we're not broken. Finally, after going back and forth, I actually got on a Zoom call with Bear Grylls and Mark Burnett, who was the producer of Survivor, and who was producing this world's toughest race, and the race director, Kevin Hodder. And they said to me, sitting there, you know, they said, Gretchen, we want to say yes to Team Unbroken. He says, and I said, well, what's the problem? And he says, well, we're afraid. And I said, what are you afraid of? And he says, we're afraid you're going to get hurt. And I laughed, because I said, we've already been hurt. I said, the worst that could happen to us, we think's already happened. I said, we have learned to navigate life with these injuries that we have, and they don't hold us back from what we want to do, nor do they define who we are. And I'm just asking you for an opportunity to put us on the same playing field with everybody else. And if we wash out on the first day, then that's on us. But if you say no, then you're never even allowing us the chance to be like everybody else, to at least give this a try. And I guess I was pretty convincing, because they did let us compete. And so we showed up in Fiji to the world's toughest race, totally overwhelmed. Everybody had beautiful uniforms and had top-notch equipment. And of course, we were there with the best that we could get through people who donated to get us to Fiji. It was a very expensive accomplishment to get there. Every team had to provide their own equipment and pay for their own tickets to get there, and all the training that went into this. We trained for 8 months, and it was expensive. It was around $50,000 to get the team there. And it came through people who believed in us, you know, $5 at a time. So we show up there and the race starts, and Amazon had 34 production companies that were on the island. I actually think Amazon people outnumbered the Fijians at one time, because there was helicopters and drones in the sky all over the place. For the competitors, this was a race, but for Amazon, it was production. And so we were trying to ignore all the stuff that was going on, but it was hard to. Someone got hold of the Team Unbroken story from Amazon, and they put a cameraman with us. And God bless him, because we put him through hell, because we were really not that good. We did things really the hard way lots of times, and that guy hung with us. But what they really captured was the story behind Team Unbroken, was that this group of war veterans and civilians who all had some sort of something that they were battling came and gave their all to try to compete in a race to see what they were made of, that, and also to demonstrate that, even though, like for me, I got blown up and I have all these injuries, and it changed part of who I am. I look different, and sometimes I feel different, but deep in my soul, I'm still Gretchen Evans, the same person I was before I got blown up. It didn't change my heart, or the fact that I was a mother, or the fact that I was a wife or a sister or a friend. That none of that got changed. All the things that got changed were the things that I could navigate around, but I was still that same person. And so our story became that don't let your disabilities or your illnesses or your traumas define who you are or what you can accomplish. And we've taken on the mantra of no barriers, which says that we believe that what is within you is stronger than anything that's in your way. And I truly believe that you know that you have it within you. People think only certain people have grit and gumption and courage. And my belief is that we all have that. Is that some of us are put in positions where we have to manifest that. And once you do manifest that, you know that it's there. And I believe that everybody has it. It's just that not everybody has the opportunity maybe to have to engage that, but it's there when you need it. And it's a great feeling to know that you can overcome these things. So that's our story of Team Unbroken, and kind of my story as a soldier who's come back from injuries and try to reestablish my life and to pay it forward and to help other people navigate this life. And I think this applies to not just veterans, but there's lots of people out there with disabilities and illnesses. And I think the same things apply to them as it does for my fellow veterans. So that's kind of my story. I want to make sure that I leave plenty of time for questions for all of you. Because I want you to know that if you ever had a question you wanted to ask a veteran and you're always were afraid to ask because you thought it might be intrusive or offensive, please ask me, because I want you to ask those questions so I can give you honest answers so that you can, work with the people that you want to work with, or maybe you have a family member who is in the military that you don't quite understand, or just that, so when you do interact with people with disabilities or veterans, that you have a little bit more insight than maybe you had before. And I'm the perfect person to ask, because you can't hurt my feelings. I always say you can't ruin my day. I've been blown up, thrown out of airplanes, and left for dead. So it takes a lot to ruin my day. So don't feel like you might find me offend me in any way. So I'll end that there and open this up for questions. And if I can see your face, I'll be able to lip read. If you're doing audio, if you put it in the chat or go through one of the moderators, they can translate for me. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I hope that it was beneficial to you. I hope it was encouraging. And I appreciate you taking the time just to talk to me tonight.
Thank you, Gretchen. Can everybody see? Are you all a bunch of Hollywood squares now? Because I tried to spotlight Gretchen. Okay. So the floor is open for questions, and that was just amazing. I actually saw the world's toughest race. Got the information from Susan Gold, and I was riveted, absolutely riveted by it. And I would suggest anybody to find that link, and it's talk about grit.
Yeah, it took some grit and maybe some foolishness. We're still racing. Like we have a race in March in Holland. We're the only US team that's competing in that race. And then we have one in Savannah, Georgia in April. And then in May, Bear Grylls is coming to the United States and he's going to jump with us and the Golden Knights at Fort Bragg. And so Team Unbroken is, I was very short-sighted. I would say I thought this was going to be a let's go and do this and see what we can do. And it really became a little bit of a movement. One of the things I forgot to say was that 6 months after Amazon released the series, Mark Burnett sent me an email and told me he says, I'm getting plethora of mail and emails, Gretchen, about Team Unbroken. And he says, nobody can tell me who won that race, but everybody knows who Team Unbroken is. And he asked me, he says, could you please keep racing? And more importantly, could you please keep talking about why you're racing? And he's been very supportive and he's guaranteed us a slot in the next World's Toughest Race. So you'll see Team Unbroken again whenever COVID allows us to go back. And it's supposed to be in Patagonia the next time that we have it. And that'll be fun and challenging.
And Gretchen, I'm curious, we got to see when Team Unbroken had to stop the race. Can you talk about the experience of the team after the race was over for you? You had,
Yeah, so
long road home.
Yeah, they cut out a lot. So everybody's always asked what really happened. What really happened, it looked like we were the first team out, but we really weren't. There was like 10 teams that were already out before we were. They just held ours out. They made a big deal of when they told us that we were out because they knew that everybody was engaged with Team Unbroken. So for us, it wasn't a failure because the victory for us was getting to the race in the first place. That was the hardest part, was getting them to say yes and letting us compete. And only 20% of the teams that competed, there were 66 teams, only 20% finished that race. Okay. And so, we were not, we weren't the greatest team out there, but our goal was really to get to the start line, represent the United States and all people with mixed abilities to the best of our abilities, make them proud and inspire them to run their world's greatest race, whatever that looked like, getting off the couch and doing a 5K or whatever it is, or walking your dog. We don't, everybody's got their own greatest race that they need to do. We just wanted to be an inspiration, and that happened. But I will say this, we are competitors, we are athletes, and that's why they don't normally fly in the race director to tell a team when they've missed a checkpoint, but they made a big deal out of it. And of course, you saw the helicopter come in, and Kevin Hodder and Mark Burnett were there, and they, made a big deal of telling us. And we didn't know that we had missed that checkpoint because if you remember, if you watched the series, that the race had been stopped because of the flooding, and we were still on the island. And the race had been delayed. And so we kind of lost track of kind of where the time thing was. And so we had just barely missed the cutoff. I think we were an hour late. And, but anyway, the team, we've had a lot of disappointments in life. And I think that we deal with them really well. We thought we came here, we did the best that we could do. There's no shame in this. We knew already like 20 teams had been disqualified, or a couple of teams just quit. Okay, and you can imagine why if you've seen that. Okay, but and they didn't show us jumping in the river. They didn't show us on the bikes, and so you missed a lot of that. So we got a really good taste of the race, and we were pretty proud of ourselves. And then what we're really most proud of was that Amazon, out of the 66 teams that competed, they only featured 10 teams, and we were one of them. And that they told our story so well. And so for us, that was really, and we didn't know that. We had to sign a non-disclosure statement. It's like any kind of reality show. You can't talk about it until they release it. And so we say we couldn't say what happened. We were just relieved once they were out there, but we felt pretty good about it at the end. Thank you.
Excellent. We're open for questions.
Hi, I just wanted to first thank you for your service. I'm one of the AMOP students. I'm in the Air Force. Haven't been to training school yet, but really looking forward to it and really looking forward to serving veterans in the future and partnering. I was wondering if you had thoughts on the physician that delivered the initial news of your being deaf to you, if you would have handled that differently. Thank you.
I don't, that's a great, nobody's ever asked me that. That's an interesting question. I don't think I don't know how he could have done it differently because I couldn't hear. And so I think he probably thought about it for a long time. How am I going to wake up this soldier and tell her that she's deaf? How do you do that? And I think that he was actually pretty creative. I couldn't read lips at the time. I don't know how else he could have done it. It wouldn't have been any less devastating. I think he could have taken any other approach. And I think he was probably felt as badly delivering the news to me, knowing that it was the end of my career, knowing who I was. He knew who I was, and that he felt the impact of that. So that's a great question, but God bless him. I wouldn't wanted to be on the other side of that bed, okay, giving that news. So I think he did a good job.
Gretchen, I don't know if you can see me enough. It's Vicki Haugen.
Hi, Vicki.
Hi, it's pretty dark. Can you hear me?
I'm getting captions, so I'm good.
Okay, so I'm your PEO sister, and I just have to say I'm going to cry. I'm so proud to know you. I have been a wound care nurse for 30 years. That's all I've done is take care of people wounded. I've never met anyone with such resilience. I'm just so proud to meet you. In taking care of patients, very many times my vets feel really discouraged and really treated unfavorably. They don't get the same services and supplies. And it's really hard to keep their spirits up. I just wondered if you could address, did you have issues where you didn't feel like you got good care?
For me, I would say 99% of the time I've gotten excellent care. I really have. Now, I've had a doctor walk into the room with me. This was towards the end of my rehabilitation before I was, totally released. And he walked in and I think sometimes words are even more painful than treatments. And what he said to me was, he goes, Gretchen, this is as good as it's going to get for you. And there was some truth to that. I think that they physically had done everything they could do for me. But the delivery was that I thought, what I received when he said that was, okay, my brain injury is not going to get any better. And I'm certainly not ever going to hear again. I get that. My PTSD, hopefully that will get better and hopefully I'll feel better. But what he was trying to convey to me, I think, was that medically, okay, this is all we can do for you, but it's the delivery of the words. What I would say to you is that always leave them with hope. Okay, there's always hope. Okay, so I'm always going to be deaf. I get that. Okay. But we hadn't addressed lip reading yet, and we hadn't addressed some other avenues. I could have done American Sign Language, all these, so he kind of left me with this bottomless, he kind of took the hope away from me. And that was very damaging. Okay. I mean, it was. And so I would say when you're dealing with any population, whether it be the elderly or veterans or anybody, is that you don't know if that's as good as it's going to get. Who can predict that? Okay. Who would have thought after I got blown to smithereens, okay, that I'd be sitting here talking about it and have been able to do the things I've done in my life and help the people that I've helped. My quality of life is as good or better than it was even pre-injury, because I'm such a better person now. Okay. I'm more empathetic and sympathetic. I'm more engaged with the world. I don't take things for granted. I mean, I'm not glad I got blown up, but I look forward to each and every day about what I can do that can possibly change people's lives. And I'm grateful for even opportunities such as this, just to share my story with a group of people who really care. And so to me, this is like a moment in time that's priceless. So, I guess my bottom line, leave them with hope.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I don't want to take the floor if anyone else has something. But I guess going along with that, a difficult question. I've been wondering if you're willing to share your lowest point. And is there anything you wish anyone had said or done for you, with you in that moment? I know I have lost friends and family veterans who took their own lives. And I don't know if you ever had those thoughts. And is there anything we can do for people who are feeling like that's their only choice?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm glad you asked, and it's a hard question. But yes, I do want to address it, and I'm happy to. Yes, what really got me to that low point was just these little tiny barriers and obstacles that I couldn't quite get past. It was the employment issue. It was the, how am I going to be contributor to life if I can't work, or if I can't assimilate into the civilian world? Where is my place? I had no peers. You think about my rank and the fact that I was a female, and there's 10 of me in the whole army. Okay, and so there's not like I can go hang out with other female command sergeant majors. There were no other ones that that were in that particular situation, or certainly not close to where I was. And then for me, being a female, so of someone 46 years old, how do I make friends when I don't have anything in common, or many things in common with women my age? While I was serving my country, lots of my peers, they were raising their children, they were working in the civilian force, they were homemakers, they knew how to bake, they knew how to sew, they knew how to have tea. I mean, I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. I was awful at it. Okay, I was terrified to sit at a table with 5 women, and I felt like I couldn't hold on a conversation with them, and I just felt so out of place and odd. So it was this cumulative, I don't belong here, I'm not worthy, I wish I had died a hero's death on the battlefield, kind of like the Lieutenant Dan out of Forrest Gump. You remember how angry he was that he didn't die, that Forrest rescued him, whereas he could have died and not had to live without having his legs. And he was in despair and he wanted to die. And that's where I was. I thought, I have nothing to contribute. I can't find my place here. I don't have any friends. I just couldn't get past that. And then the actual act of taking your life, if you talk to survivors, and I've talked to a bunch of survivors, because like you have had friends who've tried to commit suicide and some of them successful. But the ones who survived that say it's such an impulsive moment. It's not that it's not planned, but it's usually like right at that moment, you're at your lowest point, and all of a sudden you just decide you're going to do it. Okay. And of course, there's no, you can't take that bullet back. Okay. It's done. And the ones who survive their suicide attempt will say that, they are so glad that they did. An answer of what you can do is like, man, we got to be connected to people. I mean, really connected. I call it having a rope team. People, so in the military, it's an analogy, but in true life in the military, when we're traversing really steep terrain, we literally tie ourselves to each other with a rope, so that if one of us slips, we don't fall all the way down to the mountain and get hurt or killed even, but that the rest of us, when somebody falls, the rest of us pick in until that person can stand back up. And so you got to have a rope team in your real life of people. As you're walking your journey and as you're traversing through life, you're going to have great moments when you're walking up the mountain, and you're going to have moments when you fall, and you got to have people who can pick in with you until you stand back up. And also it gives you meaning in life if you're part of a rope team, because sometimes you're going to be the person that's picking for somebody else when they're falling. And so I always encourage, especially my veterans friends, find your rope team. These are the people who you can just look at them and know that they're going through a hard time, or that you haven't heard from them in 7 or 8 days. And so you reach out and you talk to them, and you can be honest and not fear judgment or something like that. It's not an easy thing to do because we're very stoic. Veterans are very stoic. Okay. But once you learn that trust, then they'll be more willing to open up. But it's about relationship and being in community with people great question.
Other questions? This is an amazing opportunity, so please don't be shy.
I have a question.
Please do, Jennifer.
Yep, Jennifer Coughlin. And I know that Gretchen has a service dog. And I've never really known anybody who has a service dog. I know what service dogs do, I think, pretty much. I have a dog myself, so I know how special they are to everybody. But what was it like, Gretchen, adjusting to your life being deaf and of having a partner, a service dog?
Yeah, so my service dog, I'll tell you, there's not a medication that anybody can give me that does for me what my service dog does for me. So first of all, the practical thing that my service dog does for me is that he hears for me. So when somebody comes to the door and rings the doorbell or knocks on the door, he comes to get me. He alerts me by tapping me with his nozzle on my leg, and my command to him is, "Where's the sound?" And then he takes me to the sound. So the door, the microwave, the washer, the dryer, not my favorite thing, but he still takes me there. Okay. He also comes and gets me when someone calls my name. So if you and I were out on a walk and I was ahead of you and you maybe wanted to stop and go into a store, you couldn't yell at me. I couldn't hear you. But but with my service dog, you call my name Gretchen. If he hears my name, he nuzzles me. Okay. And then he turns around, and that clues me that there's somebody behind me talking to me. He also allows me to drive legally, because legally, being a deaf person, couldn't drive. And so you can imagine how that impacted my independence, not being able to, because I can't hear emergency vehicles. So he rides with me in the car, and if he hears an emergency vehicle, he rides in the floorboard or the passenger seat when I'm driving. Then when he hears the sound, he gets up and he taps my shoulder, and then he looks the direction that the emergency vehicle is coming from, the direction the sound is coming from. So that gives me the ability to be aware that a fire truck or a police car or something is coming in that direction. 9 times out of 10, I see other people pulling over, but there's been times when I've been the first car, that needs to know that. And so he allows me to drive safely. He hikes with me, so I don't have to be fearful of being alone on a trail, unable to hear. It puts you at a disadvantage when you're hearing impaired, when you're deaf. There's always that thing that somebody could walk up behind you and you wouldn't know it. Okay, and not even if they meant harm, but just the startling of having someone come up on you and you not know it can trigger PTSD, or it can just freak you out. So he has certainly changed my life. And then he does what we call nightmare interruption as well. So when I have nightmares, and I start, usually if I'm like thrashing around or something, he gets up out of his bed, and the first thing he does, if I have a sheet or a blanket or something over me, he pulls it with his teeth off of me. And that degrees of temperature difference between having a blanket or something on you is usually enough to wake me up. It's really a very subtle, very safe way to wake up somebody. If that doesn't work, then he nuzzles me. Okay. And in my brain, I might be in a war, but I feel this warm, fuzzy nuzzle, and my brain automatically tells me that's my service dog. I'm not in Afghanistan. I'm not in Iraq. I'm at home in my own bed. On the rare occasion when that doesn't work, my husband says he gets up and he lays on my chest, and that dog weighs 80 pounds. I weigh 105, and that always wakes me up when he lays on my chest. So, and the beauty thing about that is that, especially from the medical side, is the longer you're in that nightmare, the more destructive they are. Okay, because you don't sleep well, and you know how important sleep is for your mental and physical health. And also you're reliving this trauma over and over again. And it's just bad for you to do that. So if you don't spend a lot of time in that nightmare, then little by little, it starts to go away. It mitigates the trauma because you're not thinking about it as often. So like I said, there's not a medication you can give me that does for me what that service dog does.
Thank you.
Great question, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I had a really quick question. So I am also one of the AMOP students at Unicom, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your story and your experience. It was very inspiring, and I know I can speak for me and the other AMOP students to say that we feel really blessed for you to come talk to us. And I was hoping you could give us a little bit of advice as future physicians who will be treating disabled military personnel and veterans. If there is anything that, like how to approach somebody where you're not exactly sure of their mixed abilities or what their ability is, and how to approach that in a way that makes them trust you and doesn't make them feel like you're passing judgment on what they're able to do without knowing them.
Yeah, great question. So I always say this, people ask, and that's I talk to people at the VA all the time. I actually give a class called Veteran 101 and say, okay, so strike up a normal conversation with them, just like you would anybody else. So what does people usually ask when you meet somebody? You know, they'll ask, where are you from? What do you do? And they may answer, they'll say, well, you know, and if you know they're a veteran, they're going to say, so you say, what branch of service did you serve in? And then educate yourself a little bit so that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. Okay, so if you don't take the time to learn that the branches of service and what's the difference between a non-commissioned officer and an officer, and what's the difference between infantry and engineer, to them, and especially if you're working in a VA that treats nothing but veterans, that just makes them think that you don't really care enough to know about them. Okay, so when they say I was in the Army, okay, at least know a little bit about the Army, or I was in the Air Force, at least know a little bit about the Air Force. Ask them what they did in service, you know, what their MOS was. Were you a truck driver? Were you this? And start out just like you would a normal conversation and engage them, and until you feel that they might not be comfortable. And then once that trust and that normal conversation, then, you know, especially if you're treating them for something, that disability is going to come up. And they're going to either try to downplay it, like, oh, I'm okay. I mean, I know I said that a lot of times. Okay, I really was in denial that I had a brain injury until it was evident to everybody but me that I had one. Okay? So I was the last one to really believe that. But, you know, with kindness and with some empathy and some interest. Okay. And remember that, you know, they're not broken, and give them hope and be innovative on how you can help them. Who would have thought that a hearing dog would have made such a difference in my life? Okay. I didn't get the hearing dog until almost 5 years after I was wounded because it was never brought up. Okay. But had I gotten my hearing dog earlier on, I think my recovery would have been a little less stressful. But it was an audiologist that finally said, what about a hearing dog? You know, and we found, you know, an organization that did hearing dogs. So you kind of think out of the box and let them be part of that decision. Like, you know, do you want to be on medication? My answer was always no. Okay, I don't want to take medication. And finally, I had a doctor that says, look, just trust me on this. If this doesn't work, we'll stop. Okay. And in reality, it did help. Because what I needed to do, things were going to get worse before they got better. And you guys know that. Usually when you're treating something for somebody, it's going to get a little worse and then it gets better. So, but he took the time to gain the trust in him before he suggested that. And also gave me the option to say, if I don't like this, I can stop. Okay, this is I'm in control of my healthcare up to a certain degree. Great question. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you so much.
I have a question, Gretchen. I'm Katie. I'm another one of the AMOP students, and I want to reiterate everyone's thank you to you for your service and your willingness to share your story. My question is perhaps a little bit different and more functional. I'm curious as to how the mask policies and sort of the functionality of wearing a mask in your day-to-day life has impacted you as someone who is unable to hear, and if you think that has had an impact on your mental health at all, or, you know, because I think a lot of those with hearing impairments or, you know, full deafness, I think have really struggled with the pandemic. And I just wanted to know your perspective.
That's a great question. Yeah, it's been awful. I'll be honest with you. It's been awful. It was like I was deaf all over again. And, you know, I tried to carry one of those masks that had the see-through thing. But, you know, reading lips is so much more than just reading lips. It has to do with the whole, you know, facial body language kind of thing. And also they cloud up and all kinds of things. So as innovative and as wonderful as I thought those were, they were not much else. Plus, most people didn't wear them. Now, when I go into the VA and they know that I'm deaf, they'll put the face shield, okay, on instead of the mask so I can read their lips, okay? And that's been very helpful. But I can tell you, it's been awful for me. I've been frustrated beyond belief. I just, you know, went to the store the other day and there was some confusion on something that I wanted to purchase, and she had a mask on and I couldn't understand what she wanted me to do. And I told her I was deaf, and I guess because I don't know if she didn't believe me or she just didn't know what, I don't know. I think people, I don't know what, it was like, I just ended up walking out. Okay. That's how frustrating it was. Like, I just can't do this anymore. So I'll be honest with you, if it wasn't for my rope team and my husband, who is more than willing to translate for me, it's been a burden on him. I'll be honest with you. Okay. You know, I can't even go to book club anymore because everybody's got a mask on. I mean, it's really shut down my life considerably. It's been very lonely for me, but I don't know, say it, yeah, you hit it the nose on the head. It's been awful. And I would say not just for deaf people, but even people who are slightly hearing impaired. People don't realize how much they lip read, or how important facial expressions are when you're communicating. Even hearing people have said that they've had problems communicating because they can't see people's faces. Okay. And so I think for all of us, but certainly for me, it's been a long 2 years.
Gretchen, could you talk more about your traumatic brain injury and how that was exhibited, and how it was that you missed it and then finally realized it?
Yeah, so a lot of my traumatic brain injury symptoms are really closely related to PTS symptoms. And so I thought it was just the PTSD that was causing all the problems, the anger issues and the impatience and the fight or flight kind of things. But really, now that I've been injured for 10 plus years now, I can now tell almost when I'm having a symptom. I can tell whether or not it's PTSD or it's traumatic brain injury. Okay, so what they had to do was take my brain and show a normal brain, and then show my brain and actually show me the damage on there, and then explain to me that, it's not functioning the way that a normal brain does. And then they also showed me that what PTSD does to your brain and how that causes your thought pattern to be different. And so I had to educate myself, and I had to just admit that that I had a brain injury. I didn't want to be that damaged. Okay. I thought I can deal with the PTSD. Okay. That was, because I know what that is. Okay. But this brain injury thing was just a mystery to me. And it actually was a quite severe closed head wound. And and that's why I'm not eligible for cochlear implants, because the brain injury damaged that nerve that is necessary to be eligible for cochlear implants. So back to your question. So when I get agitated or impatient because my military mind says, I don't understand why people don't stand in straight lines. Okay. That's my PTSD. When I can't figure out how to open my jewelry box because it's got 3 or 4 latches, and I get frustrated and angry, that's my brain injury. Because I forget things, and things have to be repeated to me sometimes. And things that I used to be able to do quickly without even thinking, now sometimes I have to think about them. And then I got pissed off, sorry for the language, I get mad, okay? And so then they marry up the PTSD and the brain injury, kind of attack you at the same time. And that's really an uncomfortable feeling, because I have to then employ my techniques to get rid of the PTSD, okay? And then realize that, you know what, I have a brain injury. It's just, it's taken me 10 years to be able to say, I have a brain injury, okay? And I can't do things, okay? It can be the simplest thing. Sometimes I'm 100% on and see it's intermittent. That's also what's frustrating to me. If it was constant and say, okay, I can't do these A, B, and C anymore because of my brain injury, but that's not the way brain injuries work. Sometimes you can do them and sometimes you can't. And you got to find people, that's part of your rope team, who understand that. So when I'm racing with with Team Unbroken, they're 100% on, or all of a sudden I'll look at them and say, I can't tie a knot the correct way. But somehow my brain has just can't remember how to do that. And they know that. And so they compensate for that. And that's the beauty of having people around you who understand this. But you get out in the real world and people think, what's wrong with you? Even looking at your keys, you got 5 keys on there, and I'm looking in there, I can't remember which key it is. It opens the mailbox. It happens. Did that answer your question? Oh, I lost you.
Yep, sorry,
That's okay.
I unmuted. I'm working with a student that has traumatic brain injury and is very stuck in, I am no longer the person that I was.
Mhm.
And I would imagine you've had that similar experience. And if you can talk to that in terms of your journey, how do you get to that level of acceptance? Do you have any advice that I can share?
Yeah, I would say to them, like I said, I was in denial for a long time that I had a brain injury. Okay. And even when they showed me the damage on the on there, I was thinking, okay, well, it really boils down to this. Okay, what other choice do you have? Okay, you have a brain injury. Okay, it does change the way that you think. It can get better, and there are ways that you can help yourself. Okay, like making lists, putting tape on a key that you want to be able to get to quickly for your own safety or just for your lack of frustration. So I would, as long as they're going to stay in denial, they're never going to help themselves. Okay, once they accept that they do have a brain injury, then say, okay, what am I going to do about this? How am I going to live the best life that I can live and be pleasant to be around and still do the things I want to do? I'm going to have to find a workaround. Okay. And that's what I do. Okay. And sometimes they're silly things. Sometimes only I know that I'm doing the workaround. Okay. They're not for public knowledge. If you spent a whole day with me, you would not, and I was doing well, you would not think I had a brain injury. And then the next day you would think, Jesus, I don't even want her behind the wheel of a car. Okay. Because my brain might not be working that day. So I would just gently tell them, you've talked to someone with a brain injury and the best thing you can do is admit that you have one, and then get help on how you can work around it. And it does get better. Brain injury, you can do, it will heal a little bit. Okay, it does get better.
Thanks.
Going off of,
Go ahead, Linda.
is there kind of, I assume everyone's individualized. Is there a sort of timeline? I know we were speaking about looking at a physical injury. I know people's tendency, my own as well, is just to kind of stare. And I don't know if people get a look of pity, or is there a timeline when veterans usually like to be asked or not asked about an injury? And also with that, kind of further asked about their experience in war. Like my uncle is a veteran of Vietnam, and he can't go to the beach and he won't talk about the beach or kind of any of his experience. And just after my commissioning in June and kind of sharing that camaraderie of joining the Air Force, as he started to tell me a little bit more. So what's been your experience working with other veterans about their willingness to talk about physical or hidden injuries, and yeah, is there kind of a timeline, or is that just all over the place and individual?
Yeah, I do think it's all over the place. And then he may never go to the beach. Okay. And and that's sad. And you want him to go to the beach. But I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I'll give you an example. I won't go through a car wash. Okay. And the reason I won't go through a car wash is because this is what happened. So I didn't know that this was going to happen, and like I didn't think it through. So you know how to do car washes? Car goes in and they're halfway through, then they put another car in and another car comes behind you. And all of a sudden I had a car in front of me, had a car behind me. I'm stuck in this enclosed thing. And all of a sudden the water's coming and these things come. And I felt like I was in a convoy in Afghanistan and that I was stuck and that I couldn't get out. And I literally had a panic attack. And it ends on a funny note. So you know how you pop out of the car wash, you put it from neutral into drive. So I was so panicked. As soon as the car in front of me cleared, I threw my car in drive and floorboarded the gas on my car. And then my wheels grabbed. And so I shot out of the car wash, and I was like airborne, bam. Okay. So there was a big line of cars trying to get into the car wash. And when they saw me shoot out of the car wash, I think they thought it was malfunctioning and they all left. Okay. But I will tell you this, it's not important enough for me to go through a car wash to try to get over that. Does that make sense? Like, I don't need to go, my husband can go wash the car. I guess if it was a death situation that I had to go to a car wash, I would make myself do it. But I know that is not necessary for me to live a productive life to go through a car wash. I can even think about it. My heart kind of races, I'll be honest with you. And you think about things like that, but something, about the beach obviously triggers him. But the thing is, does he want to go to the beach or does he not want to go, and does it have a big impact on his life? So it's individualized. There's not one, we're not cookie cutter people. What works for someone doesn't work for other. Like virtual reality did not work for me. All that did was make me relive the traumas. And also the difference is something that might be beneficial for you medical students is take into consideration too that I spent 27 years in the military, 9 combat tours, as opposed to a 20-year-old who spent maybe 3 years in the military and had 1 combat tour and got hurt. So for me, it was peeling back layers of trauma. It wasn't just one trauma. There was all kinds. Also, I was a leader and responsible for people's lives. And so dealing with my moral injury, if you will, we call, making decisions that cost people their lives, as opposed to a junior enlisted person who may even be angry at people who held my rank, thinking that, we sent people to their deaths without giving a second thought. So that's why I say it's important to understand the whole veteran when you're talking to them. What was their rank? What was their position in the military? Were they a leader? Were they responsible for other lives? Were they young? Did all those factors play into their treatment and how quickly they may get better? For the Vietnam guys, part of their whole thing is that the coming home was kind of crappy. Okay. And I'll be honest with you, the veterans of Afghanistan are starting to feel those same things, not to get political at all, but the pullout of Afghanistan was so controversial that I'm finding that my fellow Afghan veterans are starting to feel kind of the same way. Like 20 years, we fought a war over there, and then one day they decided it's over. Okay, and we ended up living friends like that. And there's some conflicted feelings about that right now, some very intense feelings. So that's things that you're probably going to have to deal with when you finish your schooling and start talking to these veterans, because they've got some really deep feelings about that.
Great. Do we have another? I have a question, but are there other questions? So Gretchen, this might be difficult to answer because your husband's not here, but I'm wondering if you can talk about the caregiver stress, because one of the things that we did when we did research with the companion program for Vet to Vet was we met with some of the caregivers. and what the companion program meant for them, that their loved one, their vet, was now with somebody who could really understand them. And then the care person could go off and kind of get their life back, even if it was for an hour or two. So if you could, and some of that was aging related things rather than combat, but if you can maybe talk a little more about the story that you feel your husband has lived through, and where gender might play in
Yeah.
the caregiver role.
Yes, he's a veteran himself, so that was helpful that I didn't have to explain a lot to him. And so that was a plus. And he also he's a combat veteran. And so he got it from that perspective. But it's hard on the person that's caring for you, because there's this agape love, this love that they have for you. And yet you can be a difficult person, okay, at times, okay? I mean, it's just until you get your mojo back, okay, for lack of a better term, until you kind of find your thing, you're a difficult person. I was a very difficult person when I first came back because my life was shattered, okay? And he was trying to pick up pieces and I couldn't even identify the pieces. Okay. And so everything he did was, wrong, or you're over helping, or you're overcompensating, or I don't need this. And I've been, like all that kind of stuff. And it was exhausting to him. And, and he was really one of the first ones that says you need to, I went through the protocol of PTSD, the 6 weeks. Okay. Put your own medication and go home. But it was so much more than that. He says, you need to go back and do this for your own sake. Okay. So it's hard to be that honest broker to the person you're caring for, but it's the best thing you can do for them. And also he never gave me like a I want to say, like a non-negotiable. Like I knew he was going to be there with me no matter what. Okay. So I could be myself and apologize later, and knowing that he would accept that apology, like, I'm sorry. And he would say, I know that wasn't you. I know that was your brain injury, or that was your PTSD, or that was your sadness, even coming through, or your remorse. And that's okay. But I still feel like that the onus is on the veteran or the person who's being cared for to apologize. Because I don't think having a brain injury or PTSD or moral injury gives you an excuse to be an asshole. It doesn't. Okay. I mean, you can have some mercy and grace, I think is what I would say for the caregivers. Have some mercy and grace, but you can't just take advantage of them because you're not well. You're still a person, and you still know right from wrong for the most part. So anytime I think that I'm less than nice to my beloved husband, I say I'm sorry, and I try to do better. I don't want him to feel like a caregiver. I want him to have the best life he can have. So that's a motivation too, to get better for our people who are ill. Is that I want to live this great life with this man, and he didn't anticipate me getting wounded, and neither did I. But that's the hand we've been dealt, and what choice do you have? Okay, you can lay there and have a sucky life, or you can get your grit and gumption and your resilience and say, I'm gonna go forward, and I'm gonna be a pleasant person. I'm gonna give back to society, and I'm gonna do great, wonderful things, and come with me. Okay, so that's what I would say about that. If that was helpful.
Very, very. What question do you wish one of us asked you that we didn't, that you would like to answer?
Let's see. Gretchen, why are you doing adventure racing at 61? I guess, I don't know. I have lived a wonderful life, and I'm not done yet. And it's not over for me. Now I have so many things on my list that I still want to do. It's unbelievable. I don't think I have enough time unless I like the wonderful Betty White and live to be 99. I like a life like hers. She was really, I think, an inspiration for all of us. Should we all live like Betty White and still have a smile on our face at 99 and still be a gracious woman and love pets and people and all that. That's, what I want to do. I don't know. I guess I would say that I would ask you this: was this beneficial? Was this a total waste of your time? That was a question. It wasn't rhetorical.
I just have to say that I think the best thing you said tonight was that it's okay that it's sucky, but I'm going to make good even though they're still bad. The bad doesn't go away, but I can still make good and I can still have those moments. And if each and every one of us does that with our life, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, it does. They do say attitude is no, character is what you do with how things happen to you. And there's some truth to that. And, I love my mantra. I say to myself every day that was within me is stronger than anything in my way. And I truly believe that whatever presents itself in my life, okay, that what I have in here, I can persevere. And I don't just want to persevere for myself, but I always say this, I want to go to the top and I want to drag as many people with me as I can all the way up there. Because I don't know about you guys, but when I do hike a lot and I climb a lot of mountains. And when I do it by myself and I get up there, it's great and it's wonderful. But there's nothing like sharing that moment of summing a mountain with people that you care about, or people who never would have done it had you not partnered with them or journeyed with them to do it. It's one of my favorite things to do, is to take someone for the first time to a 14,000-foot mountain who thought they couldn't do it, and to see the look on their face. And to me, that's a moment worth living for. And if I can do that as often as I can, then I'm a happy woman.
Gretchen, you're an inspiration, and I thank you. We all do, for your service. But this has been really wonderful for me. I mean, I thought it would be interesting, but it's really given me insight into my husband, who was a medic during Vietnam. And there are things that he just doesn't talk about. Like, I asked him if he wanted to join me tonight, and he said no.
Yeah.
Just no. So now I have a little bit better understanding of why someone, wouldn't want to take advantage of hearing your story. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Okay. So I'm so privileged to be here. And so I'm just humbled that I have something to offer all you crazy, smart people out there. And like I said, if you go forward and help other people, then that's what my life's all about.
And Gretchen, if you could maybe, everything you've said that was incredibly poignant, but because we have the AMOP students here and they're going to be physicians, and you have given some guidance throughout tonight, but if you were to speak to them specifically, what would you say to them tonight?
I would say, don't just treat your patient. The Greek term for treat is to drag through. And so don't drag people through their treatment process. It's hard to be ill, and it's hard to be different than you were. Okay. And it's, that you're different. Like I remember how I used to be. Okay. I have memories of being able to remember everything and keep everything straight in my head. And I have memories of hearing, even though I don't hear anymore. I have memories of that. And so when I'm sitting with my doctor and we're trying to navigate something that's a problem, I like it when they are stern, in the sense of saying that this is what I think is best for you. Don't be afraid to speak your mind. You're the one with a medical degree. But then they also ask me, how do you feel about that? And do you have any fears about this? And what are your concerns about this process? Okay. Because sometimes my big fear of taking medication was that I was going to become addicted to something that I didn't want to be addicted to. I was terrified, even though they told me this is not an addictive medicine. I had heard so many horror stories about my friends who got addicted to drugs, and I just didn't want to take them. I'm not a drug person, okay? And it took a lot of convincing for me to have faith in that. And so I would just say, to journey with them rather than to treat them, to remember that they may be the 10th patient you've seen that day, but you're the first doctor they've seen that day, and you're everything to them. You may be the only person who's trying to help them, and that's a lot on your shoulders. And I realize that when I say that's maybe hard to take in, but you may be the only hope they have. And your expertise and your care are important to them, even though they may be resistant. It's because they're afraid. They've been hurt.
That was fabulous. What we didn't hear tonight was how you got into the military. What was your drive? Because and to stay in the military for as long.
I fell in love with the military. I don't know if the Army found me or I found the Army, but man, oh man, it was a perfect match. Okay, I'm just wired like that. Yeah.
How old were you?
Some of my worst moments or some of my favorite memories, when it's 120 degrees and we're in Afghanistan and we're, making breakfast on the top of our Humvee because that's how hot it is. Okay. And the things that soldiers do and they make you laugh. And the fact that I love the fact that the military sometimes is the great equalizer, whether you're from the wealthiest family in New York or from the poorest family in someplace else. I look out there and all I see is uniforms, and it all says United States Army. And I don't know whether they're wealthy or nor do I care. To me, they're my responsibility, and I love them. And they all did one thing that 1% of the population did, and they rose their hand and they said that they would defend their country against foreign domestics. So help them God. And that took some guts.
Mm-hmm.
And to say that, and they were willing to die for that. And that, to me, it makes somebody very special. And so I was honored to stay in the military for as long as I did. And I don't regret one day, not even the big bad blow up day. I don't regret that day. And like I said, it really truly made me a better person. I wouldn't be talking to you right now had I not got blown up. So there's that. Okay.
And did you come from a military family?
My dad served in World War II, but you know what? He never talked about it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I really went into the military out of necessity, okay, to support myself. And it was the best decision I ever made. Absolutely love our armed forces, all the service. I have a son-in-law who's in the Air Force. He married our only daughter, and he's serving. And I try not to give him career advice. I mean, it must be intimidating to him. I'm an E9, command sergeant major, and my husband's an 06. And so we try to stay out of his life and not tell him what's best for him. But every once in a while it happens. But so I don't know. We just try to support him the best we can.
Any last questions from anyone? We're at that point where we could easily wrap up.
I just have a quick fun one. I'm also a hiker and I love through hiking. So I wanted to know if you had a favorite mountain, and if there's any through hikes, maybe like the Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest Trail, John Muir for Team Unbroken, or yourself in the future.
Yeah, so absolutely. So the next on my list, well, my favorite mountain, Mount Rainier or Mount Hood, are pretty awesome. Next on my list is the El Camino Santiago. As soon as I can get over there, actually I can probably do it now because COVID's kind of really not affecting if you're out walking around, other than staying in the housing. But my husband's a little reluctant to send me overseas right now, but that's on my list. And then Appalachian Trail, I think it's the prettiest. I haven't done the whole Appalachian Trail, but I've done big sections of it, so almost all of it. So I think the outdoors is a great healer for lots of things. And I encourage people to get outside and do and enjoy creation. I think, like I said, that's right up there, right behind my service dog as far as treating my mental health issues and my physical issues. It's, something about breathing clear air and seeing beautiful trees and animals. There's something very healing about that. So yeah, keep hiking. Okay. It's good for you.
Well, thank you, Gretchen. I want to answer your non-rhetorical question. This is the best hour and a half I've put in a long, long time. I want to thank you so much. You've hit on so many wonderful issues that need to be expressed, and you're such an inspiration. So I thank you so much. And I like to think that Vet to Vet Maine is the rope team, the rope team for veterans in Maine. And I think you're right, it's so important for everyone to have a rope team, to have people who are there for you. So thank you again.
Follow us on Instagram at Team Unbroken USA, if you will. We're doing amazing things coming up, and watch us on the World's Toughest Race if you haven't. That's a fun thing to do while you're whatever you're doing, keeping away from COVID, keeping safe. That's a fun thing to do. And thank you all. You were an incredible audience. It's my privilege to spend this time with you.
Well, thank you again. And I want to tell it, yes, let's.
Thank you.